My favorite movie from 2010 is Toy Story 3. I have a confession. I'm sort of two minds about the Toy Story movies because I mentioned before how much I like Toy Story 2, and it's kind of funny. I remember being really blown away when I first saw this movie, but although I still really like it, obviously it was my favorite movie from that year, but at the same time I'm kind of wrestling with myself anymore over whether I prefer 2 or 3, because they're both really good movies. And here's the thing, I know Doug Walker kind of talked about this already. He was talking about how everybody thought this was the really emotional movie, and I'm starting to think that the emotional aspect may have been a little ham-fisted. I shouldn't say that, because, I mean, admittedly, I got a little misty-eyed when I saw this movie. I think, the thing about it is that I think they were smart enough to realize that their audience had grown up with these movies, because I was 7 when I saw the first Toy Story, and I was 22 when I saw Toy Story 3. So, I mean, even if it is a little unbelievable that Andy might do that, you know, it is also smart, because that's how a lot of the audience was probably feeling at that time. I mean, you know, when you make a sequel, obviously the people who saw the previous movies are gonna see that movie. And you know, eventually I realize that a lot of kids probably saw the movie too, when eventually they're going to go through the same thing, though, again, I'm willing to bet anything they're not going to act like Andy by that point, but I shouldn't talk about that anymore. What is good about this movie? It is a very natural step. That's one of the things I do like about the Toy Story movies. Each movie is different, and each movie presents, I want to say, real problems toys would go through, but you know what, I really can't think of any other way to articulate that point. It's something that it would go through, you know, the new kid in town, you know, the kid's not playing with the old toys anymore. Toy Story 2 was a very clever idea of making the toys, of revealing that Woody was a collector's item. I really like that idea. And with this movie, it was the inevitable that they ended off on with Toy Story 3, because the idea that, you know, it's finally happening. He's moving off to college. He's abandoning them. But I really liked that idea, and I thought it was a clever premise. But you know, going back to what I said about Up a moment ago, this wasn't just an emotional movie. It was also a very funny movie, and there were a lot of funny moments in it. Like when I remember laughing so hard when Mr. Potato Head had to put himself together with that tortilla, and the first scene when the toys are in the daycare center. What cracks me up about that scene is that it's really not a serious scene. You know, it's just kids playing with toys. That's what they do. But the fact that it's played so seriously, that's what makes it funny. Buzz's Spanish side in this movie is really funny. Plus, a lot of people talk about Woody's character arc, and I do enjoy seeing it, but I also find Buzz's to be very interesting just because we see so many faces of this guy's personality. He was the fish out of water in the first movie. He was a noble hero who was really socially awkward in the second movie. Yeah, come to think of it, that's another thing we don't see we see some of it in this movie, but gotta think of it, that we don't see as much of socially awkward Buzz in this movie. Well, we do, but I think it was funnier in the second one. I need to stop talking about the second movie, don't I? Oh, well, Toy Story 3, you know, it was a big movie. I'm kind of I'm kind of worried about the way that Pixar has caught sequelitis, and I'm starting to think that this may be the movie that kickstarted them on that. But I never like to fault. I never like to fault a good movie for other movies. It's like, but and that's what this is. A very good movie. I'm glad that it got the accolades, even if I am torn about whether I like this more than whether I like 2 or 3 more. Both good movies. I love the Toy Story franchise, and I kind of wish this was the capper to the series, but then again I remember saying the same thing with the way 2 ended. We're in the home stretch, as my favorite movie from 2011 was Super 8. Before I talk about Super 8, I need to give an honorable mention. This was the movie that I was most excited about seeing in 2011. It was probably the best experience that I had at a theater in 2011. But it wasn't exactly a wide release. My honorable mention for 2011 is Research the Musical. Why was I so excited about this movie as opposed to any other? Because this was the only movie from that year to star yours truly. Obviously, that was a big deal for me, but like I said, not everyone had a chance to see it. Unlike the movie that actually did make it, Super 8. So I don't know if it's fair to count that, but I just wanted to share that with all of you. Maybe give the movie a little free promotion. But anyway, Super 8. This was a movie I actually did not discover until much later after it came out. In fact, I didn't discover until January of the next year. But this movie was billed as sort of being J.J. Abrams doing a Spielberg-style film. I have to say, it does come pretty close. I talked about how, and it actually was executive produced by Steven Spielberg, so I'm sure he gave J.J. a little guidance. And I was talking earlier about how I sort of feel like Spielberg's kind of gotten safe, and this did remind me of a lot of his earlier work, such as E.T. and my favorite Spielberg movie that isn't an Indiana Jones movie, which is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But this movie had a lot going for it. It had a lot of suspense. It had a lot of atmosphere. I remember being really excited about seeing the aliens, and this movie knew, just like Spielberg did, it knew just how to keep us teasing along. Like, oh, come on, where are we going to see these aliens? Where are we going to see these aliens? But not to mention the fact that when I was that age, I was making movies with my friends, so I empathize with that. If I had one criticism of this movie, it's that the kids in this movie do not act like kids. Maybe Spielberg should have guided J.J. Abrams by having him watch The Goonies, a movie he helped write and executive produce, where the kids definitely act like kids, even to the point where some people may be reluctant to show it to kids because of their severe potty mouths, but at the beginning, when the one kid is talking about his artistic style, I thought, oh, it's funny. They're acting like adults, like on home movies. I love that show. It's like that. And then later in the movie, there's a scene. This was sort of my wake-up call moment. There's a scene where they're talking about it, and they're talking in one of the characters' room, and it's like, they're playing this completely straight, aren't they? But, oh well, even with that minor hiccup, this was still a really good movie. There was a lot of suspense. The scene where the train crashes was absolutely amazing. I really like watching the gears in the kids' heads as they try to put their pieces together. put the pieces together and trying to make this movie, and how they try to sort of unravel the mystery of the aliens. But in terms of whether or not this is a movie to show to kids, well, but it does seem more like a movie made for adults with kids in it. I mentioned there are some adult themes, and there's even an F-bomb late in the movie. I say if you're comfortable showing them a movie like The Goonies, then maybe you can show them this. Maybe wait for a TV edit or something, because I think kids would like this movie. I'm not making it's kind of hard to predict. I don't know what kids like. I mean, I liked a lot of strange stuff when I was a kid, but oh well. Even if not everyone could share in my experience for my true favorite movie from 2011, at least there were some good movies I think we can agree on. Oh, also I have a modest confession. This is actually the only movie on this list that I actually don't own on DVD yet. The thing is, I actually wanted to buy it, but it's been on Netflix Instant for like a year now, and really like the movie, but I don't have a lot of money right now, and as long as it's on Netflix Instant, I really don't have a ton of reasons to buy it. It's definitely a movie I would like to own, but and concluding this video, my favorite movie from 2012, Django Unchained. Haha, I bet you thought I was gonna pick The Dark Knight Rises. Actually, I thought I was gonna pick The Dark Knight Rises until I saw Django Unchained. That actually was my favorite movie from last year. But I think I also ought to discuss, even though 2012 was not the best year for me on a personal note, I really don't feel like discussing why, because for a combination of reasons, especially since I know someone's going to say, oh, you think that was bad? Well, this happened to me. So let's not go there. But 2012 was probably the first year in a while where I really got excited about seeing movies again. I didn't even see every movie I wanted to see, but in what actually was a pretty exciting year for movies, the one that I liked the most was Django Unchained. I also think it's fair. I'm also glad I finally got Tarantino in there, because I feel like I've sort of been skipping him. I talked about Scorsese finally winning his Oscar. I mean, Pulp Fiction was my runner-up for '94. Maybe I should have made that a tie, but no, let's not split hairs. Reservoir Dogs was my runner-up for '92. Let's see. It wasn't explicitly my runner-up, but it was Jackie Brown was pretty close for '97. Inglourious Basterds was my runner-up for 2009. So finally, after managing to, and after somehow losing it in each year, he finally topped my year's favorite for 2012. But what can I say about this movie? I'm glad I'm finally getting to talk about it, because I really do like Tarantino's style. I remember David Carradine commended him for taking risks, and he really is doing it. Someone once also described him as like a filmmaking DJ, where he just blends different elements from other movies. Though I also kind of like a joke the cinema snob once made, since he does a lot of since a lot of the movies he blends into his movies are, I mean, he's winning Oscars, but doing homages to like midnight trash movies. He's like all critics, I like Tarantino's movies, but hate the movies he homages. I thought that was so funny, and that's a pretty astute point. But with Django Unchained, this movie had so much going for it. I mean, there were some good action scenes, there were some There were some stand-up and cheer moments. There were some harsh moments. There were some haunting moments. There were some genuinely laugh out loud moments. I remember one friend said that the only reason this movie didn't make his top 10 is because he thought it was kind of disjointed. I can see where he's coming from with that complaint because like I talked about how funny this movie is, and the really funny parts are kind of front loaded. Like I was laughing so hard during like the first I'm gonna estimate half of this movie. But after a while the laughs kind of peter off, and then there's a really funny moment with the clan oh wait, it's technically not the clan, but I digress. Anyway, really funny moment. But well, there are still funny moments throughout the movie. Leonardo DiCaprio is really funny throughout this movie. Actually, while we're talking about Leonardo DiCaprio, although I'm really happy that Christoph Waltz won an Oscar, and I thought he was really good in this movie, I am kind of ticked that Leonardo DiCaprio did not get an Oscar nomination for this movie, because I think he was the show stealer. He's just so good in this movie, and he really does absorb himself into this character. I just find him, funny, because he's this southern villain who's a bit of a Francophile, and he's very cunning and despicable, but at the same time he's so theatrical and over the top but he's so theatrical and over the top, and I think that just makes him very entertaining. I'm not used to complaining about someone getting snubbed for a nomination when I'm talking about someone who won for the same movie, but I really liked this movie. Jamie Foxx is really good. He's the kind of character that you root for, not just because he's the hero, or not just because you sympathize with his character, but Jamie Foxx has a lot of charisma in this movie. So it's like you empathize with him, but you're also rooting for him because but you're also on his side because he's such a charismatic and likable character. And it's interesting how I could say the same thing too, because I was just talking about Leonardo DiCaprio. He's the bad guy, but he's also very charismatic. And yes, Christoph Waltz, he was very, very good in this movie. I do like his performance. Even if I'm ticked that Leo got snubbed, I'm still glad he got the Oscar for it, because I do like him in this movie. But yeah, that was Django Unchained. It was my favorite movie from this year. I do want to point out that since MovieFan12 is doing his video, he's going on into 2013, and I decided to make 2012 my cutoff date because, well, year isn't over yet. But I do want to, I think I'd be remiss if I talked about. I admit that I haven't seen every movie from every year, but I still feel like I've seen enough that I got a good focus on it. But I still feel like if I already picked a favorite for the year, I'd be cutting myself short, because I didn't even see like two of the big movies that if I were actually to do a top 10 from last year, Skyfall and Les Mis, I actually didn't see those until like April. Really wanted to see them in theaters, but for one reason or another I didn't. So I eventually had to catch up with them, and I kind of don't want to be in this same situation. I mean, I didn't even see Django Unchained until January, but it came out at Christmas, so I guess I can be forgiven. But so my favorite movie so far is Oz the Great and Powerful. Really like that movie, and I really like that movie, but I kind of have the attitude that if you know what, if there's a better movie, you won't. I mean, I really like that movie, so if it gets better, I'll be excited. But well, that concludes my list, and I do want to feel free to share your favorites from each year. I admit, like I said, I haven't seen every movie from every year, and again, a lot of executive decisions were made. I mean, if I did my runners-up, they would, these videos would be like 3 times as long. So, again, feel free to share yours. I'm out, and yes, new movie questions answered is on its way. Not gonna spoil things, but I got a surprise for next episode.